Well, family, friends, brothers, sisters around the world, we have to have a talk about something that's very, very, very serious. Yet it's not treated that way as being something really serious. It's about sin. Yeah, yeah, let's talk about sin. It's a subject that we know very, very little of, and I'm not claiming to be an expert or an authority on this issue, but I've come across a lot of information that really caused me to think seriously about just how serious sin is. And that's what we're going to talk about. And I'm hoping that you would stay with me and engage yourself with me on this subject and just take a journey with me into just looking at what it actually is and not treating it just like, like it's just another day or just another thing. This thing is so serious, it's not even funny. And yet, can it be? Yeah, I guess. But it's really not funny because it's that serious. And we really don't realize why it affects our lives the way it do. We know it affects our lives, but we don't understand how or why it affects our lives the way it does. So most of us have been learning about sin, come from a background where we've been taught to respect and honor and be obedient to our Creator. And when we don't listen and follow our Creator's orders or rules or regulations or laws, we call that being disobedient, and we call that the act of sin, the act of sinning. And truly, that's how we look at it. It's just an act that we did not obey, and that's what sin is. It's disobedience to God. However, because the Lord has really been merciful and gracious to us, that for over 6,000 years now, God has allowed us to develop and fully grasp what sin is, that it's more than just an act of disobedience. It really is. And that's what we're going to explore today. So yes, it took us quite some time to really develop and understand what sin is, to have a proper, just a proper meaning, definition of what it is and how it affected not just humanity, but it affected heaven. It affected a lot of things, actually the whole universe. Okay, so yeah, this is a good place to be right now because our Lord Jesus Christ said He was going to lead us into all truth, and we really do need to be led into all truth because we have been dealing with deception for a very, very long time, and we've been dealing with a lot of lies for a very, very long time. So When the Son of God, which is the Word of God that was made flesh, came down and took on our human form and was born into this world as a human, he really expounded on what sin is, and he expounded on what deception is and what the lies are. And by exposing us and giving us a difference, a real big difference of opinions, where we have ours and we have God's opinion, really and truly, it has helped us out tremendously, so that we wouldn't be continue to be deceived or tricked or lied to. And that's what we're going to really explore together as we look at what sin actually is. So I had to take a step outside into nature to continue our conversation about sin. You see, most people look at sin as like just rules, regulation, and laws, and when you break it, okay, oh well, you just broke the rule and you broke the law, and there's consequences, and you can live your life by choosing if you want to commit a sin or not, and they just treat it as something that you do, like an activity, something that you choose to do or not to do, and you just deal with the consequences. But sin is very, very deeper than that, okay? And that's what we're going to get into in this discussion. We're going to look at what sin is and how God is viewing what sin is, how it actually affects us, and just look at sin from all of its angles, okay? And I'm talking about there are 300 and probably 60 different ways that we can look at sin to get a full spectrum of what it looks like and how it actually affects us. In fact, this reminds me of when I went to the hospital and they were doing a scan of my heart to see what is going on with it, because they don't understand why it's working at 15% and what's causing it to work at 15%. And they can't see any blockage. They can't see any kind of damage or anything. And they have these high technology now. They have higher technology, and they call it radioactive technology, that it went from MRI. MRI is a type of scanning. Then it went to CAT scan, and now they have a new type of radiology technology. I forgot the name of it, but it's a four-dimensional scanning device. And when they put me under that, this device has the ability not just to capture what my heart, the shape of it, the form of it, it makes you look at it in a 4D way. Okay, 4-dimensional, not 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional. So that's what we're going to be looking at. Sin in a 4-dimensional way, and not just a 2-dimensional or a 3-dimensional way. We're not just going to look at it like, oh, well, it's a choice that you make if you break the law and so forth. We're going to look at what it is. So that's what we're getting into. So you can say that we're looking into the science, the actual science of sin for the first time. And since sin is something that was created before human beings, the first man and woman was created, because it began in heaven. It began with God and the angels. That's where it started, and it was transferred to here, where we are on earth. The best person to explain to us what sin is has to be someone who's directly connected with God. Now, normally we would associate that with prophets, okay, and that is very true because prophets were used by God to warn people about when they are committing the act of sin and what it's actually doing collectively to the people. And we learned that from reading the stories of Israel and their journey and experiences that are recorded in the Holy Bible, in the Holy Scriptures. However, to get a full spectrum of what sin is, it has to be from someone who's not just a prophet. It has to be someone who is a seer, okay? And we can find that, um, we will find that understanding in the Holy Scriptures when the Lord talked about Joshua the high priest, who was given a commission that if he was to walk with God and follow his ways and keep himself from sin and not indulge in any activity of sin, that he would be allowed to be the one to understand how to see sin, okay, in its full spectrum. And the Lord had broke that down in scriptures by saying to Joshua the high priest that I'm giving you this stone, okay? And this stone has 7 eyes. So this is basically God's own biotechnology that he's using to show Joshua this is what Joshua have to use in order for him to judge the whole earth and the people that are in there, all the inhabitants, by using this stone that has 7 eyes. Now, this stone that has 7 eyes represents the eyes of God that is visually seeing everything on all its levels and its aspects, from the spiritual to the physical to the mental to the emotional aspects of our lives. Okay, so with a seer that is chosen by God, and when I say chosen by God, that means from birth they have to have this biotechnology built within them, and then they have to use certain follow certain rules and guidelines for them to be used by God to become a seer. And so a seer has this ability to come out of their body by spirit and enter into spiritual dimensions and be taken to someone's home or someplace and see an event happening in real time. Okay? So it's like that person is being God's uh, biological camera. Okay? And they had that ability to see exactly what's going on in the home, the conversation. They can see in the spiritual dimensions what is happening energetically, and it's a whole different world. It's a whole different point of view, and it's God's point of view, okay? Because He has that ability. That's the all-seeing eye. That is God, okay? And He said He has 7 eyes on this stone, okay? And for those who understand that a stone represents a people, humanity, a stone can represent a person, okay? For the Lord has said that we are goodly stones, okay? He likened us to stones that are part of His holy temple or his church, his people. We are stones that make up his temple. So that's the symbolical representation. So on a stone can have seven eyes, and we call that perfect vision. But that perfect vision that the seer has allows them to see exactly the conversation and the activities or what's happening in real time. So it's an amazing understanding that we have now about how God looks at sin. And that's what we're going to take a look at from a seer's perspective. Now, prophets are not necessarily seers, but all seers are prophets because a prophet does not have to see something. They can be just told what the something is, and they go and share that with the person or individual, just like how Nathan went and told David about what he did when he committed that sinful act with Bathsheba. Okay? So they don't necessarily have to see the act. They just know that that act was done, and they were told to be a messenger of God and go tell that person and warn them of what they were doing and what the consequences are. But like I said, that's a prophet. A seer is different. So, all right, let's do this. Now, for those who are familiar with sorcerers and witches, they have a similar technology, but their technology is not the same. Okay? Of course, theirs is an incomplete technology. Um, and the only reason why they got this technology is because the evil spirits, the fallen angels that fell, had taken the secrets of God, and shared that with the women who they lusted after, okay, who they made for themselves wives, and they shared all of their secret technology, and it's a higher technology that was shared with them, and so they have their version, okay, of what they call a crystal ball, and but their vision of what's happening is incomplete. They can't see everything. They don't have that ability, and that's because um, they weren't authorized to use that technology. So it's perverted. So when you go to a sorcerer or a witch, um, a seance person, any any person that is connected with the fallen angels, okay, they're the ones that don't have a complete understanding or vision or a proper wider spectrum of what's going on. So that would be the difference between the two. So with God, all things are possible, and because that's why he can be omnipresent everywhere at the same time. Um, those that are the fallen ones cannot be everywhere at the same time. So they have to use something and someone to be their eyes for them. But it's a similar technology. But they call theirs the crystal ball. So God doesn't have to use that because those that are chosen from birth to be a seer has it built within them. Just something built within them. Only God can see the end from the beginning. And only a person like that has that kind of vision that is able to rightly give us the facts of what's truly happening in real time. So now let's go back and look at the deeper aspects of sin. Okay? Now, another way that people have been looking at sin or been taught to look at sin is like it's like making a mistake or going in the wrong direction, which both are true, but it's more than that. It's more than that. The act of sin in and of itself is going against your natural way of being. So you're experiencing more than just
going in the wrong direction or just making a mistake. It's not something that you can correct, okay? Because with a mistake you can correct, or if you're going in the wrong direction, you can redirect yourself. But with sin, you have to go through a whole different process. You have to go through a purification or a cleansing because that energy of sin literally, physically attaches itself to you and it stays within your energy field, okay? So it really can't be corrected or redirected to make things right again, to restore your natural way of being. Now, when we sin, we're breaking the laws of our Creator, the laws of God. So, what we are bringing onto ourselves is the energy of whatever that actual sin does or brings. So, that means sin is alive, it is a living entity, it is a living thing. And being that it's an energy, that means it can give you an emotional feeling. Okay? So it's more than just an act of obedience. Okay? In fact, the act of sin, okay, gives you an emotional feeling that affects every aspect of our being as a human or as a spirit. Okay? Because you can be a spirit being like an angel. Angels are not made the same way that we are. Angels are actually made of fire. Okay? Fire. They are made of fire, a different element than we are. We are a combination of many things, but this sin, in us committing this, or when we actually participate in this particular act, it affects us emotionally. Okay? And that's one thing that all spirit beings have is emotions. Okay? We are emotional creatures, all of us. So the question is, what aspects of our being does it affect? Okay, let's call it out. It affects us spiritually. It affects us physically. It affects us mentally. All of these aspects is part of our human experience. So, like I was saying earlier, sin in and of itself, it's like an energy. It is alive. Why? Because it has motion and it has magnetism. Okay? It has motion and it has magnetism. So even though we may not be able to see the physical attributes of sin, another way to say it, we may not have visible characteristics of that actual energy, but we know it is real. We know it exists. Why? Because we can feel or sense its presence. I mean, that's pretty powerful because it's not like you have to be in the actual or be participating in the actual um, um, act of disobedience. You don't have to be participating, but if you're around it, you can actually sense its presence. That's how powerful this is. Okay? So when one engages or agrees to interact with sinful activities, okay, this unseen energy that this particular act brings, it's a sinful act, it becomes part of our energy field. And once it becomes part of our energy field, it doesn't leave, it doesn't go away. It's there because it's energy. It's joined our energy, okay? And it changes our whole energy field. So to get rid of it, you have to do it in a way that you can cleanse and purify your energy field. That's the only way to bring correction to yourself, to bring ourselves back into our natural way of being. I mean, this is pretty deep. And we're talking about the science of that. Okay? So I want us to take a listen to a seer that was given insight on what sin actually does.
So there were three men in the circle and they were having sex. And one man was in charge, meaning that he was the one who was periodically giving out instructions to the other two what to do, where to move, what to touch, and things like that. And the sounds that these three men were making was just the worst. Whenever God shows me this act, these people sound like they are dying. They sound like someone is killing them, and yet they're still engaged in this practice. So the sounds were very, very difficult for me to hear. And the room had this horrible, powerful energy. This was the energy of demons. There is no way that I can pretend and say I do not know what the heavy presence was. There was an extremely heavy, nasty, oily, satanic feel in the room that was almost like panting, almost like expectation. And this was the presence of powerful demonic entities in the room as a result of what these men were engaged in. Please understand, whenever you fornicate, the presence of the Lord and the Holy Spirit and the angels of the Lord are not with you because you are engaged in illegal sexual activity. Sexual activity is extremely powerful. Sexual activity is connected to all the gates of humanity. The physical gates like the eyes, the ears, the unseen gates like the heart and the mind. When you take sexual activity out of its God-given, God-mandated space, which is only in marriage between a man and a woman, you are inviting Satan direct into the core, not only into the room, but into your mortal body and your spiritual essence, and you will absolutely reap the consequences of that. An STD or a pregnancy is not the worst that you can get. When you fornicate, or you indulge in adultery, or you indulge in sodomy, or any of the acts that God prohibits, man to man, man to woman, or adult to child, you are inviting Satan directly into the matrix of who you are as a person, and it will never end positively for you.
Wow, that was a lot. So I want you to take that in for a minute because that's how serious this is. So when we're dealing with sin, we're not just dealing with the energy of it, we're also dealing with demonic presence. And that is very important to know. And the reason for that is because when we need to fight or resist it, we begin to understand why it's so difficult to extricate or to take ourselves out of its grasp and clasp, because it's not just the energy of sin we're dealing with, but those demonic entities that are present with it.